panel are still here. We're going to get back to them in a moment. But earlier today, Piers Morgan sat down with Andrew Tate. He told Piers he wasn't being serious when he repeatedly called himself a pimp in the past. Have a look.
I exaggerated on the internet 9 years ago for comedic effect. I'd walk into a nightclub and there'd be girls at my table, like every other man who walks into a nightclub, and I'd say, pimpin'. Oh no, put me in jail. 93 days was not enough with the cockroaches. I should go back. This is a matrix attack, Piers. Every single person, every single man out there has done things worse than I've done. In fact, I will argue, if you put 99.9% of men through the level of scrutiny I've been through by multiple federal agencies, you will find a lot worse than him saying he was a pimp on the internet 9 years ago. You will find actual, genuine crime. And I've done nothing. I live true to God.
Well, Ben, what do you make of that?
It's incredible, really. It's like, no, when I said I was a pimp, I didn't literally mean a pimp.
No.
But to be fair,
this is one of the great lines of defence now, isn't it? People say, yeah, I was only joking.
Yeah, but to be fair to him, if you take, like, any rapper and the things that they've said, they call themselves a pimp 15 times in 30 seconds in their songs. I mean, you know, he may have a point that he wasn't being literal and they're taking him a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Too literal.
I think this rapper point is really interesting. You get rappers all the time talking about how they've sexually assaulted multiple women. Nobody takes them up on that. You don't see any criminal investigations as a result of those accusations. So I do think that in some ways you can't take people's speech as an indictment of a criminal activity.
No. I mean, I suppose the problem for Andrew Tate, Henry, is that he's been arrested. He was held in jail in Romania for a long time. They don't still seem to have come up with a case against him, really. He's still under house arrest. He still has, and I've got teenage sons, you know, he still has an incredible effect on young men, many of whom may not worship the ground that he walks on, but are very, you know, very keen to look at anything he does.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate in a way that you end up kind of, if it does turn out there's absolutely nothing to this, you end up kind of martyring him. Like, I've not got much time for Andrew Tate or his message, and I think he wildly overplayed it in that clip when he's like 99% of men will be worse than me. It's like, come along, Andrew, like, please, like, come on. But
the Bugatti's outside.
But nonetheless, if you
they're not as rich as him. I think is the point.
Precisely. But I think that if you want to combat what Andrew Tate is doing, there are ways to do that. And if it does turn out that there's nothing to these allegations, that's absolutely not the way to do it.
But one of the reasons why there are people who listen to what Andrew Tate has to say is because of things like that bloody book. Yeah. You know, because your kids are going to school and they're learning from the age of about 5 all the way up until they get to be about 15. That this is the way that their life is going to be. Yep. And they see Andrew Tate and go, oh, maybe there's an alternative.
Yeah, and I think it's about this cultural change. I mean, Andrew Tate represents men who feel as though, A, they might not have father figures that are fantastic as you might, but they might also not feel as though, you know, there is this kind of feminization of men, that men feel as though it's sort of toxic masculinity if they are being a man's man. Yeah. And I actually think this has damaged so many young men. Now, Andrew Tate has stepped in and said, you know, get rid of all of that. This is what a man should be. And unfortunately, it's a very, very radical version of what that is. Yeah. I think Henry's right. It means that those people that end up going to those sort of radical perspectives of what men should be, rather than looking at it from a more moderate perspective.
And I think there's a problem for sort of more mainstream critics in that you want to, you know, young men, young boys, they need role models that are actually attractive to them, right? And, you know, again, whether or not you like them or loathe them, there have been people like that before. There's Andrew Tate. Before that, there was Jordan Peterson.
I like Jordan Peterson.
And the thing that really struck me recently was that Caitlin Moran did a book called What About Men? Right? And it was she did this big book on feminism. Now she's like, I'm really worried about the boys. And you read it, and it's like all of the positive traits that she attaches to masculinity are basically, and she even says this, they're the traits you have in a good dog, right? Yeah. And she's like, what do men need? Men need feminism, and they need all the things that women have. They need better relationships with their mothers. And you're reading this, and you're like, no. You have to have a message for young men that is attractive to them, and that can't be which is entirely progressive. No. It shouldn't be Andrew Tate's level of like rancid misogyny.
And you don't have to not, you know, want women to go to work and make sure they stay in the kitchen and all that stuff.
But there has to be
there's plenty of ground in between.
There has to be an element of it which sort of very progressive people aren't going to like, because it would have to venerate, you know, conventionally masculine virtues, and because there seems to be utterly unwilling to do that. They leave this void into which people like Andrew Tate step.
Yeah, but doesn't this just go back to the point that men and women are different? And I think that in society at the moment, people have forgotten that men and women are different and fulfill different roles. Well, exactly. But I think it's a wider thing about the separation.
But do women have role models? I mean, do you have a role model as a woman?
My mother is my role model, I would say, but I think it's more so about the fact that, I one day want to be a mother and I want to one day, potentially fulfil that traditional female role. Not every woman wants to fulfil that kind of role.
Loads of women don't want to be mothers. I mean, that's just the way it goes.
And people are free to make those choices, but I think it's unfortunate that boys now are forced to look up to men like Andrew Tate.
Yeah, well, they're not really. Let's move on to the front pages. Ben, front page of The Sun. Big interview with Jerome Starkey over in Kyiv. He's gone over to find Vladimir Zelensky. Putin has tried to kill me 5 times, he says.
Yeah, well...
You're not very good at it, then.
Clearly not, but also 5 times. It's a lot in the past,
It is quite a lot,
Surely you'd put a lot of effort into one big attempt rather than just constantly lobbing shots from the side
That's
or whatever.
not the Russian approach to anything else.
No, it's not.
That's not how they do war.
No. No, they just keep going, right?
Yeah, precisely. This is, they send masses of infantry at trenches and they send masses of assassins at people. You only need one to get through.
Yes.
But then what's the point, really, in killing Zelensky? Surely just be replaced by someone else.
Well, exactly right. I mean, Zelensky's worried, of course, that the war has been forgotten because there's another war now going on, which everybody's marching around all over the world talking about, and so everybody sort of has forgotten about Ukraine. Yeah,
it does feel a bit like he left out at the end of that. Putin's tried to kill me 5 times. Please send me more money. Is possibly the sum.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem Ukraine has is that they had this big offensive, right, which was an absolute military disaster for them. And that was based entirely around trying to keep Western interest in the war, because the ugly reality is that you've basically got trench warfare in eastern Ukraine. Russia is very big and is capable of churning out cheap weapons. That's going to be a stalemate, basically forever. And what Zelensky's worried about, understandably, is that eventually Western patience will run out, or he'll run out of people. There was an amazing piece in Time last month which said the average age of a soldier in the Ukrainian army is now up in their 40s.
Really?
Right? Yeah, they are there is a serious risk if they just keep up this attritional warfare that they run out of young men to do the fighting.
We also underestimate how large the Russian population really is, and this comes back to that
they
point.
can keep conscripting them, can't
well, exactly, and effectively what you have in Russia, and this has been the case, I mean, for the past 150 years, every time they've ever fought a war, is that they've got unlimited supply, effectively unlimited supply of unskilled soldiers, effectively people they can conscript that might not necessarily be as skilled as say, a British soldier or potentially even a Ukrainian soldier, but what they are is they're unlimited and they can...
Well, they just keep coming, they just keep turning up.
Like Stalin said, they've got fewer bullets than I have soldiers.
Yeah,
well, indeed.
Well, exactly. It's very true. Bit of history there for you. Front page of the Times, Ben. Working from home push to get more sick Britons off benefits. I don't know if this is a news story about benefits. Rishi Sunak is going to end the national scandal of 2 million people who are out of work. I mean, successive Tory governments have been trying to do this for a while.
Yeah.
It never really works.
This is the problem with Sunak. He'll say it because it's a bit of red meat. It'll get people going, oh, great policy, but it's never going to happen, really, is it?
No.
He said he's going to stop the boats, a year ago.
Right.
They're still coming.
Well, I mean, one of the things that Jeremy Hunt, I think, said the other day was that he's going to hire loads more people to work in the Department of Work and Pensions in order to get the other people off the dole. You're kind of going, so that's still going to cost us all the same amount of money then,
isn't he just hire the people on the dole?
Yeah.
Well,
that would sort of...
just move them over.
That would cut out the middleman,
I mean, I think the issue with a lot of this is that there is a case, to defend Jeremy Hunt, there is a case that like an awful lot of these schemes, they're not monitored properly, right?
No.
You just end up handing money out. And you get this also this inflationary problem. So there's some welfare benefits, for example. There was one welfare benefit that was introduced, and it was like the Special Hard Cases Fund. It wasn't literally called that, but it was meant to be for the most serious cases. And it ended up going to 80% of people, right? Because the people at the desk are like, oh, well, I think you need it. And there's no central control. So there is a case for getting a grip. But ultimately, the hard truth about this is that the only way you ever really get people off is if you have hard pullouts, right? And this is what the government has been talking about. They've been saying if you refuse to engage, if you're on universal credit and you refuse to engage in job seeking,
you'll stop.
You'll lose eligibility.
It's what they do in America. People have 6 months of unemployment and then they have to find a job. And guess what? They do.
In principle, that would work. But the question is the government, when someone doesn't do it, and someone withdraws their money and someone sends around a journalist to their house and they're looking all hanged on, and they're like, well, I'm now going to, I can't. Does the government have the will to be like, actually, you didn't look for work? Tough.
Yes.
Wasn't
they haven't
welfare
so far.
state initially a temporary scheme after the war?
Well,
and it's just couldn't become like an hour.
But the other problem is that whenever they set up these kind of monitoring units, they seem to never catch the people who know the system. They only catch the people who actually do need the money.
There are far too many people on benefits in this country. And there was a really fantastic piece in The Spectator a couple of months ago even, by Fraser Nelson, which effectively looked at the amount of people that are currently on out-of-work benefits. 5.3 million people of working age on out-of-work benefits. Now, this is, I think, a scandal. Forget about the fact that this is a huge waste of taxpayer money. It's a waste of human potential.
Yeah.
These are people that could be working, could be contributing to this country that are not. And the reason why, the government, the incentive system is not there.
Well, if you can get more money by being on benefits than you can by getting a job, then
It makes
it's not
sense.
much of an incentive to get a
can't
job, is it?
blame them.
Also, if they try to get a job, they'll lose their benefits.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
In the short term, where they
You can't
work
blame
up to
them.
making more money.
The marginal tax, as you say, the marginal tax rate of working is often extremely bad. But also, this stuff is like mentally debilitating. Right? If you work is good for you. Once you've got a job, you think you can do it. You get more confident. You go for more jobs. If you spend a couple of years on unemployment, that sinks into you,
totally.
right.
Mentally,
And you don't feel able to work, you're not confident, you're not developing skills, and that's a self-reinforcing cycle, which is how you end up with people trapped on it. And ultimately the only way to get people out of that cycle is a bit of tough love, and it is love, right? It is like you'll be better off.
In the Mail, Rishi Sunak is saying he wants to boost the economy by rewarding hard work, which is the same story but slightly different take on it. So I guess he means by that he's going to look after you if you go and get a job.
Surely that's the job of the free market, not his job.
That's where it gets tricky.
Well, I suppose...
You could change the tax system.
Just cut taxes. That's the way to do it.
And I suppose that's exactly what this story on the front page of the Daily Mail is sort of trying to get at here. It's talking about the fact that there is this kind of scope for tax cuts. And I do think that
now there
whilst...
is. Just before an election.
Well,
I don't know.
Time, just before an election, they have tax cuts. Isn't that convenient?
That's how the economy works.
Well, indeed.
Because he's managed to get the inflation rate down.
That's why. It's all about natural economic forces.
You know what I found really funny? That it used to... So originally when Jeremy Hunt did that, I don't know if you guys remember the sort of teacup analogy about 6 months ago, talking about
that was awful.
It was awful.
Patronising.
And he was talking about why inflation happens, and he said, well, it's all of these global factors. And now they're saying, well, the government fixed inflation. Hold on, was it global factors or was it the government?
Well, exactly right.
This is always the case.
It's
right?
always
every no matter what the government is, if there's bad economic news, it's like, well, I mean, have you seen the global situation?
Indeed.
And then the moment you fix it, it's
well,
like,
we fixed it.
Look at what we've done.
This government's
Look at what
leadership.
we've done.
Absolutely. A couple of interesting food stories. Microwave steak, apparently, is something that we should be eating.
No.
Chefs often liberally season steak with salt before searing it. A physicist has concluded they're wrong and they should just microwave it instead. I don't think I've ever microwaved a steak.
Is there no end to this misery?
I mean,
no,
I'm
horrible.
We were talking about how horrifying that book was.
Yeah.
This is worse.
This is another. Well, do you know what it is? Do you know what it is? It's another
Crazy.
bloody scientist who thinks he knows better than everybody else. He's not even involved in food. He's written a book about the science involved in cooking, but he normally focuses on advanced ceramics and composites. So what the hell does he know
this feels a bit
about
like
cooking?
the scientist who developed the Segway, right? And it's like, this is the future of human transportation because I'm a scientist. It's like, no, just leave it.
I think we can't rule out that some scientists actually just hate humanity. They know the truth.
And they're also
telling us the
geeks.
opposite.
I mean, you were at school with people who were geeks and nobody talked to them and they went off and became scientists. Now they wear a white coat and they think they can tell us all how we should be living.
Indeed.
Well, I'm not putting any steak in the microwave, to be honest.
No, I think this is morally
I kind of
stuff.
want to test it, but I don't know if I could bring myself to do that.
I actually don't want to look at that.
Even in the name, of science.
Oh, I'll bring it away from you.
Oh my God!
It's bad for his mental health if he looks at this story.
Well, the other one's a more historical one than it is scientific. This is in the Times. Scientists may finally have solved a centuries-old mystery. Why is that some of us will get a splitting headache after drinking only a small amount of red wine, and it goes all the way back to ancient Rome. You'll be pleased to know.
I love red wine. I think it is the best.
What's your favourite red wine?
A lovely glass of Merlot.
Merlot.
I will drink that till I die. I think it's wonderful. And I think I'm sick of the public health lobby and all these random historians telling me that it's bad for me or telling me that it will give me a headache. I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is apparently it's a genetic thing for some people. They just react
Well,
very badly to it.
They can make those. They can
It's like
make
port.
those
I mean,
choices.
port definitely gives you a headache if you drink too much of it.
Well, they can make.
I mean, if
those
you drink too much of
choices.
anything.
Yeah, but I mean, I can drink loads of red wine. I don't get a headache. But if I drink a bottle of port,
Well, I think we've just got some.
I suppose it's the
superior
bottle.
genes.
I was going to say, I don't want to.
I'm not talking about just a glass.
I suppose the point of this is that Mike and I just have superior genes, and that this is just survival of the fittest.
That could be it. That could be it. But I wouldn't want to encourage that. I wouldn't want to encourage that sort of thing. But listen, picture of David Cameron on the front of the Times as well, as we said. Well, it's been a pleasure, all of you. Thank you very much indeed. Henry Hill.